Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Goho from Home. I'm Stacey Karlsson. I'm the Managing Director at Goho. We're a PR, marketing and events agency. And I'm joined this week by Ed and Alex from Pageant Media and Festicket, the wrong way around, but there you go, to talk about the future events and what it holds. Lots of you have been on this webinar before. As you know, we like it to be really interactive, so please do chat in the chat box and ask your questions in the question box just there as well. We'll get through as many as we can, but we have had a huge amount of questions in preparation for this. So first of all, Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm head of event operations at Pageant Media. Pageant are a B2B publisher focused on hedge funds, online gaming, insurance and other things. We manage around 200 events a year. They're a mix of summits, award schemes, dinners, breakfast briefings. All were in person, now all are virtual for the time being, and that's kind of across Europe, North America, and some kind of dotted around in Asia and South America as well. So that's me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. And Ed, how about you?
Hey, I'm Ed. I'm a commercial director at Festicket. Festicket is a discovery platform for music festivals, events, and a ticket provider for all hosts of promoters of events. So we ourselves don't actually produce any events. We're a servicer for the events industry through ticketing.
Okay. But you've obviously been really, really busy with everything getting rescheduled, as we've just been talking about. But thank you both for taking the time out to join us. It's going to be about 45 minutes long today. As I said, we'll get through as many questions as we can, and please feel free to join in. So first of all, let's get going. Alex, we'll start with you. What do you think the future of events will look like?
So I think what all of this period has kind of shown us is actually kind of the power of live events and how much they've been missed in a way. We've got kind of sponsors and attendees that are kind of chomping at the bit to kind of get back to live events. I think on the one hand, I think it's shown that there is very much a demand for in-person meetings. But on the other hand, I think it has also shown us that the virtual kind of B2B events virtually has been a lot of talk for a lot of years, and I think finally this has kind of made it come of age, and there are going to be now some elements that we've kind of implemented now that are going to be here to stay. So lots of stuff around data, especially being able to kind of prove kind of eyeballs on events, connections made, all of that stuff that comes with virtual events. I think we're not going to get rid of now we've got it. So I think the future is probably hybrid. But yeah, lots of things that I think will change going forward as well.
Yeah. And what about you, Ed?
Yeah, obviously we work in a different event space. So the top end of ours are big mass gatherings, as they're now being called, of thousands of customers, live music predominantly. It's kind of the £100 billion question, I guess. I definitely think this period has allowed us to move into a more versatile industry. As Alex said, the kind of online space has really exploded. Whether it's a stopgap, I think time will tell, and how long there is a gap between us being able to do live events. But I think the economy around the industry that we work in is so big that I don't think we can not go back to where we were. It's just a matter of timing and how much the kind of sector can stay dormant and survive. But I think logistically, once we will start getting back. It's just how that will look for the size and the economy of it all is going to be completely different.
And Alex mentioned hybrid events. That's something we've certainly been starting to, well, obviously we haven't delivered any yet, but looking to deliver. That's what we think the near future especially holds in store for us. From a festival perspective though, how do you think that could potentially work, or do you not think it could?
The interesting thing is that I think, from a B2C sort of consumer event, the amount of planning that goes into these things is massive. And I think some people think a music festival starts in sort of May and then is produced in July, but these things start year round and they take 12 months. So what we're seeing, even with like the drive-through ideas, is that they take so long sort of from inception to actually delivering it, that promoters are hesitant to kind of jump on board because they might spend 3 or 4 months down the line of organizing something which actually might not be applicable, and that's the problem, the unknown time frame. But that being said, me personally, I think that the hybrid idea is definitely something that will take hold. I think big events have been doing broadcasting. You saw Glastonbury over the weekend, but festivals in Europe, Exit Festival, for instance, in Serbia, they've always done like a TV production. So whether now we start bringing that in and realizing there's a global audience for these events for artists, yes. Will it be as versatile as the actual physical market? Personally, I don't think so. I think the independent scene in music festivals is so much around the community and the hub that these online experiences are probably more down to big artists, big production, and there's only a few promoters in the world who can actually pull that off and monetize it properly.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of carrying on from that, Alex, what has your transition to virtual events been like?
Busy is probably a word, and slightly frantic. No, so we moved. We kind of, to be honest, we had a little bit of a heads up on this because we actually had an Asian event that was due to run in Hong Kong in February, which we had to cancel. I think kind of before we thought COVID was going to be a real issue for the rest of the world. So it kind of gave us a little bit of a head start, I think, in this kind of shifting plans quickly. But then we soon moved everything from March onwards. Initially, I think like lots of companies, we postponed stuff and just tried to push everything to the back of the year, and then very quickly realised that wasn't going to work, and we were going to need to kind of protect revenues and business as a whole. So we pivoted really quickly to putting together virtual offerings for our events. We're still working out some of them as we go, but we're kind of in a bit of a rhythm now, and we now have virtual summits. From next week, we'll have virtual award ceremonies and kind of all the networking around that, and then we're starting to think around kind of the dinner events that we do as well. So it's been a quick transition. It's been a lot of upskilling. I manage a team of 10, and it's how to bring everyone on board with all it's a very different skill set running a virtual event to a live event, and everyone's really like works so hard and so well to kind of learn all the things that they need to do, and I guess what we've learned so far is content. I know this probably has been a mantra in B2B for years, but content is king, and it really is. We're finding real stickiness around really good content. And what virtual is letting you do is maybe get some speakers on board that you wouldn't be able to get because their diaries and the travel and everything else would prevent that. They're kind of available for half an hour to do a speaking slot. Plus you can pre-record, and there's lots of ways around it. So we're finding we're getting bigger name speakers, and that content is really proving what's the draw for things. We're probably finding we're trying to do innovative things on the kind of social and networking elements as well, and we're finding some traction, but we are finding that there's a lot of behaviour science in this, and you can't really predict how someone sat at home on their own in front of a laptop is going to behave. You can make some best guesses towards it, but it's a lot harder to control than if you had 200 people in a ballroom, and you can make that conducive. Online is a lot harder, but we're trying our best to think of new things to do to make people chat to each other. Lots of learnings very quickly.
Yeah, we had a client the other day actually who'd done a Zoom event themselves before they spoke to us about helping them, and they said, well, we've got to speak to you now because someone picked up their phone. They went to the toilet during Zoom, but he still had his Zoom on. So they were like, turn the camera off that guy. They were like, we need someone else to help us. And I was like, okay, no problem. But I hear you about not knowing what people are going to do, and they just forget.
And event design, I guess, like there's all the technology is new and like the behaviors are new and all the rest of it, but there are like event managers are really, really good at event design. It's kind of like what we do, and we think through the kind of list of problems that are there to be solved. That's what we do. And actually, if you take that approach to it, virtual is very different, but at the same time, it is just having that expertise to kind of try and understand what might happen and what might go wrong, and like how you prevent someone from taking their phone into the toilet with them. Troubleshooting those as you go, and that's put us in pretty good stead, I think.
Yeah. Have you got anything to add to that, Ed, about how you guys have been, or the people you've been working with have been doing a transition to virtual?
Yeah, I think, flying by the seat of pants is exactly the same for us. I mean, from a ticketing perspective, we'd never really ticketed online events before, and 95% of our promoters had never attempted to do a live stream before. So it's interesting that normally both sides of the fence are so well versed in, the kind of sword fight of creating a ticketing deal that we normally get into. Now we're having conversations with promoters where they're kind of like, do you know how we do it? And we're kind of saying, no, we're just trying to figure out how we do the ticketing element of it ourselves. So yeah, it's been interesting to see which promoters are kind of equipped to just flip their skill set and hungry to kind of diversify. But it's still to be seen whether it's just a stopgap at the moment or whether it really, really does take off. It feels like no one's really going at it full hog from our side of things anyways. It's sort of, can we get a bit of money in this period where we've got no revenue? So yeah, I'm still waiting for like the Live Nation and the big guys to pull out, Rihanna on Wembley Arena with no one in the audience and TV production by Netflix and that sort of thing. But it hasn't come yet.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That if anyone online fancies doing something like that,
please come speak to us about ticketing.
Exactly. So, have you got any advice, Ed, that you'd give to event planners during this time? I
mean, weirdly, my advice. I used to run a music festival a few years ago, and the game is basically risk. And my advice is that if you think you've got a good idea and you think you can communicate it to an audience sector well enough, then go for it. But I mean, honestly, that hasn't changed in any time. Any music festival, any music event, promoters will outlay huge sums of money on the hope that people buy tickets and turn up and spend their money. Profit margins are ridiculously small in our industry. So be a risk taker, I think, would be my advice to anyone. Plenty of economists and in different sectors will say that in these times, economic downturn creates opportunity, and those who kind of stick it out and change their skill set, like we've just been talking about, will flourish. I think from a company perspective, that's what Festicket are trying to do. We're kind of sticking in the game, there to help promoters, there to kind of service those industry needs that we always have done, but now with an extra bit of risk that I think we're willing to take. Yeah.
And what about you, Alex? You got any advice?
I echo what Ed said about, I think it is about taking risks, and like there's a little bit about being innovative and fast and like you're standing good stead. I think there's a lot of companies that came out of the 2008 recession in a similar way. Lots of new businesses started off the back of the opportunities that presented, and actually have gone on to do really well since. And I think we'll probably see similar out of this. I think there'll be lots of new ideas and formats and things. I guess from an advice point of view, I think, like I touched on it before, but I think it is about being a bit forensic with it. Like there's a control freak in me as well, and I'm sure lots of other event planners are similar. Don't really leave anything to chance with them. Like you have to think through. I mean, it's balance. Virtual events have got loads of variables to them that a physical event doesn't have. Like you might have 100 users and you can't sit next to every single one of them and make sure their Wi-Fi is working and their microphone works and everything like that. But you can do some troubleshooting in advance with your audience to make sure that you've done everything you can to make that experience work for them. So I think there's a little bit of that. Be forensic. Really, really, whichever platform you're using, if you've got an account manager there, like really, really go into the detail of, okay, but what if this doesn't happen and what if this doesn't happen, and write your plans based on that, because then you'll feel much more confident on the day that you've done everything that you need to get as many people online, interacting, and all the rest of that. And I think the other thing is virtual doesn't, I think there's a bit of, this is kind of internal stakeholders, like going up the chain to kind of, if it's clients or senior management as well, virtual doesn't mean cheap. Like there are some cost savings because you haven't got a physical venue, but if you're trying to deliver a really excellent experience, then you're going to need to spend some money either on production values, getting the marketing right to kind of broaden out that audience, or we're doing some stuff around kind of event in a box experiences that we kind of post out to attendees as a way of kind of giving some extra value to sponsors and to act as a bit of an engagement tool as well. And that costs money, but it's if you're trying to really do an experience, then you have to invest in it as well.
Yeah, we've been doing something similar actually, to kind of, so even, and we're moving into it, especially with when we look into hybrid events, so that the people who are there potentially, like at a dinner and there's only 50 people in the room, but then if there's 100 people at home, they can still have the same drink, or they can still eat the same chocolate or whatever it is. So they still feel part of that experience rather than being completely segregated. But I mean, I was just going to ask you as well, just say, like, collaborate as well, because we're all kind of in this together, but we've all got different experience and contacts and, you know, things that we've been through. I mean, we were just talking, Alex, about the higher space safer events training, which there's all these kind of things that are available, and my team's already done that. But, you know, by talking to each other, you can get feedback and see if you think it's worth it. So just collaborate and talk to people as much as you can, I'd say.
As well, and like using your suppliers that you've used for years on physical events, like speak to them about what if we were doing this in a different way, because everyone is trying to innovate at the same pace, and it's really great to bring those smaller companies with you as well to help, because you'll all learn by doing, and we want to come out of this the other side and everyone in a strong position together. So I think that's really important to try and find business, like if you've got business to give to people as well, try and do that. So hope you end up with that.
Definitely try and give business to other people. Let's say that on it. So just like, it's just a little bit more about the virtual events situation. Do you think, I mean, I'm really with you, Alex, in the terms that, like, I'm a bit well, we used to work together at the Guardian, so we probably all get to try to do things the same way, but get totally over the top on data and analytics and like being, you know, really forensic with things. And I do think that's one of the great things about virtual events, is you do get so much data, and, you know, you can check how long people are engaged for and how much they comment and all that sort of stuff. But do you think that they will continue post-lockdown, virtual events this is?
I think depends on audience. Like, I think all events depend on audience and what you're trying, objectives and audiences, right? And I think it may well be, I think virtual sometimes, I think there will be some events where people that have always been in the calendar, that people take 7 days out of their life for, that they travel thousands of miles for, might actually turn around and say, you know what, I get the both. If it's going for the content and to have a couple of meetings or something like that, I think you'll get a lot of people that are turning around and going, really, do I really need to invest that much when I could just do it online? But like I said before, I do still think there are some, especially where that face-to-face element is super crucial, and it's about that kind of serendipity of who you're going to meet rather than knowing exactly who you're going to meet. I think people in business development roles in particular are going to need to get out of the office and meet those kind of people. So I don't think live will go away. I think, like you said before, I think it will be maybe, and it will be in line with guidance as well. So it could be that we see local smaller events coming back before big mass gatherings. So could you do a 30-person, 50-person content-led networking event locally, and then have 500 people watch that online as well to broaden out that audience? And then that does the mix of being able to give that data to the sponsors, for them to do kind of lead generation off of, but also having that face-to-face element for them to kind of have those real, longer term connections with people.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that virtual is going to carry on post-lockdown, Ed? Sorry.
Yeah, I can't see why it wouldn't continue. Will it continue in the same vein? I don't think so. And it's all just going to come down to the specific promoter. Like Alex said, in the immediate future, there's definitely going to be. We seem to be seeing this phased approach of coming out of lockdown. So you could imagine that events licenses are going to be given for smaller capacity. So can a promoter kind of extend that out? But I think it's kind of prudent to say that a lot of music event promoters aren't in this to do live stream events, that, you know, they want to create a physical thing, and this live streaming is just creating a revenue stream. And the short answer is, if they can make money off it, then it will continue, and if they don't make money off it, it won't. So every brand is going to have a different audience and people who engage with it. I would like to think that some promoters, really take on the mantle and start creating content that can stretch their event out and reach new audiences. Whether a lot of music promoters have the ability to, a lot of these people work on very, very lean teams, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, running a sort of 25,000 person festival is not unknown. So if they actually have the infrastructure to continue this on, but I probably could see that the bigger players will bring it in somehow. And like the monetizing element of it, I feel that the reason it would lend itself to the bigger guys, it's probably going to come down to more brand exposure and sponsorship revenues rather than consumer revenues. There is so much content for free online. What is the appetite for someone watching a live band performing in July when they can just go on YouTube and watch full concerts throughout history? So the content has got to have that bit in there. So whether festivals can offer up that content for free to get a big audience and kind of sell that avenue into sponsorship and brand partnerships, maybe. But I would probably say that it will significantly drop off as soon as people can get inside. Probably similar to how many people were using House Party in the first 2 weeks of lockdown, and that.
Well, yeah, that was like 5 years ago.
That? I'm pretty sure Zoom is like cashing it in now, and then in about 3 months' time, Zoom will just disappear off the face of the planet as well. So, yeah.
I thought there was something interesting earlier that you said as well, which I think kind of ties into the future event stuff. You mentioned communities as well.
Yeah.
And I think there maybe is a future for, Stacey and I were at The Guardian, and it was all about kind of professional communities and all the rest of it. But I do think that might come back as well, this more like long tail events as kind of touch points for those communities. And actually the real trick is how you curate a community, a really engaged community all year round.
That's the $1 million question for live events at the moment. The consumerism of music in particular has completely changed over the last few since the internet, basically. And whether I feel like the older generation, if you were to look at the data of viewership of Glastonbury on the BBC over the weekend, I'm pretty sure it would be the older generation, because younger people now go to festivals. They don't consume the music in the same way, so it's a lot more flippant. It's almost a secondary factor to why they're there, and that's kind of shown with lineups. There's a lot of same artists sharing lineup spaces, so it's less about the music and the feeling of live music. It's more about being in a space with your friends and doing what you do when you're a kid. So whether there's actual interest to watch the music online without that atmosphere around you, I'm not sure. Like the younger generation have that, and they're obviously the ones who consume online content a lot more. So yeah, the community element of it is adapting and changing. So music festivals are just completely different beasts than they even were 10 years ago. I think now they are almost a meeting point.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, actually, like there's been a lot of reporting about how like the councils are giving temporary events licenses and stuff like that for like, I don't know, boot sales and street parties and stuff, which I think is a bit madness, to be honest, because we were talking earlier, weren't you, Ed, about like the people on the beaches, for example, and about how in essence it is in a mini festival, what they call a mass gathering, and they're doing exactly that. They've got music playing, there's alcohol, and what do you think about that, how that's going to affect things?
I just, to be honest, it sounds weird, but it can only do a good thing for the event promoters. I mean, obviously we work on the ticketing side, so you guys will know better from a production point of view, but I can see that the local government, the lack of information and connectivity that we've got with local authorities and central government is only going to be highlighted when these kind of illegal parties or free parties, beach gatherings, all that sort of stuff comes to light, where there is no structure and safety. And then maybe the authorities will start seeing the value behind having organized professional events, because we've seen it across all the cities. Young people will find a way to congregate. Manchester, Birmingham, London, they've all had raves and illegal raves, and that's 5,000 people in a park in Manchester. There was 2 shootings, a rape, all that sort of stuff. There was no structure and event organization around that. Surely the government will look at that and think it's probably best that we engage with a local promoter, the Warehouse Project, and actually put on a safe event. I think it was the Bournemouth one in particular. I think someone from an event organizer in Bournemouth, they do a festival in the same area, and they get 170,000 people over the weekend. And then that weekend was 500,000 people came, no infrastructure, no parking, no event safety management, and everything that ensued happened because of that. So hopefully, we know consumers really want those events back. Hopefully authorities can start seeing that there's value in allowing these events to happen, because we can actually do things safer and more structured. I hope so anyway, because it's kind of ridiculous that those sort of things are going on, and all of us in our industry are gagging to get back and put things on properly. And same with artists as well. They want to perform. So,
you got anything to add to that, Alex?
Probably not really on the mass gatherings. The biggest event we do is like 300, 400 people, but we are already thinking about what like socially distanced events might look like though. And, I guess what these are going to look like in, and I think it's hard to picture, isn't it? Like you're doing an award ceremony or something for 500 people and everyone sat around the table. I've been invited to one in November as like an attendee, and they're talking about kind of 5 or 6 per table, all kind of like with distancing and like hand sanitization everywhere, and kind of rules about touching each other. And you just don't know whether that's gonna. I guess it depends on the type of the event. I can see it in a conference setting. I think you could distance people quite easily. In an awards and party, I just don't know. And it's going to be weird, isn't it? But I'm thinking people who are planning November are kind of doing it on the basis of what they think the guidelines are going to be in a few weeks, and then actually hoping what they might be like in November. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I've just shared actually in the chat. Oh yeah, I'm here. I've just shared in the chat there's a Higher Space have done it's a templated letter you can do to your MP just to talk to them, bring to their forefront, I guess, the issues and what it would be better getting the events industry back. So if any of you want to use that template, it's really handy. I guess as well, I was just thinking though, in terms of, they've also said about like street parties and boot fairs and all that. So that might not necessarily be mass gatherings, could just be 20 or 30 people. But I'm concerned, like on Saturday, that the pubs are going to open and loads of people are just going to go a bit crazy, and then we're going to end up in lockdown again. So I think as soon as they can allow it to be more organised, then hopefully we'll be in a better position.
And that's what's challenging as well, isn't it? As well, you're trying to hedge for everything. You're trying to be like, but then everything has got a knock-on impact. You don't want to start really booking and confirming venues for October, November if your cancellation terms are that you're going to have to pay 50-70% of that. Like it's all of that, and events take time to plan. It's you can't really throw something together in a couple of weeks. I think that's the biggest challenge as well, and I think a lot of companies like us are erring on that side of caution, of being like virtual for this year, then we'll think about live again next year.
Yeah, well, and Ed was talking about something earlier actually. You were saying about when you go to like the supermarket, for example, the queues all socially distanced and they make everyone sanitize their hands, and then when you get inside it's just like a free-for-all. And we've had quite a few questions actually asking us about when we think the music industry and live events and like nightclubs and stuff are going to open again. And obviously we don't know. We've been talking about the things that we think, but I mean, one of the things we can talk about more is how advice you would give to people to how to keep their attendees safe. Have you got any advice on that and what the things you're going to do, Alex?
So I think until we know when live events are coming back, I don't think we've put anything in place. We're going to do the Higher Space training and accreditation thing that you've suggested. And I think it's just going to be a case of seeing what guidelines are there. And again, going back to that kind of forensic planning thing, almost looking through those line by line and giving attendees that kind of as much certainty as we can that we're following guidelines and this is what we need for them to make sure it's as safe as possible. It's almost going to be like probably like a two-way contract, isn't it? I think a lot of this it'll be about what we're doing and what you need to do. But I think until we know when the next live event is, we're probably not going to think about it just yet.
Yeah. And what about you, Ed? You were talking about ahead? Do you know kind of what they've been doing, or can you share?
Yeah, you cut out that. I just missed that question. You're back. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, did you hear the question or did I cut out? Sorry, everybody.
No, you cut out just at the right time. So is it what are we seeing our partners kind of doing at the moment, and how they're kind of tackling it?
Yeah, you mentioned that some organisations are still managing to put their festivals and events on. Can you share any of the things that they're doing to make their guests safer or feel more safe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're in a really unique position because we operate globally, and as you know, every region, even just in Europe, is different rules and different ways of tackling it. So we have events in Germany, France, Portugal, Spain. Obviously, the UK is kind of at the bottom of the list in terms of getting back to normal. So we are getting foresight of how people might tackle it. But to add into the mix, the cultural differences for Germany, for instance, they really value their like nightclub spaces, and the scene there, as it were, the community is really strong. We're seeing that they are flipping the model of their spaces and turning them into kind of sit down venues where you buy a ticket, which is a minimum value of drinks, and then you can come and you have to, sit at the table, enjoy a bit more laid back DJ music than the thumping. But I think in general, most promoters will agree that trying to shoehorn what you used to do into the current situation until they just say we can do everything, it's not. You're basically looking at becoming a different company and a different product. So if you're a club promoter and you normally book DJs on a Friday night in a 1,500 cap nightclub, until they allow that to happen in its entirety, I don't think promoters are going to start doing 20 people in a nightclub stood in a circular ring, only allowed to dance and stuff. We've seen the drive-through events. Again, it feels like the independent promoters amongst us were doing that, diversify, and they were quick to get in there and do cinemas or kind of unique, quirky things. And then recently, you've probably seen that Live Nation then just came in with massive lineups and big production. But I'm not really sure the uptake has been huge for that, because people's people's interaction with these ideas are very like time sensitive. Like for a week it sounds great, and then a week later it's like, yeah, it's not the same thing. I can imagine everyone listening here has had the same scenario where they were on lockdown and they built up that anticipation. I get to go and see my friends again, and then you go to the park, and after about an hour you're like, oh, this is a little bit anticlimactic, because it's still not what we were doing. It wasn't, it was all organized and it's very structured, and we still feel like we're not in the same position we are. And I think that is going to be the case for any event. So in terms of like the safety and things, I just don't see how you're going to do a 10,000 person music festival with spacing and social distancing and these sort of rigid things. Obviously, more hand sanitizer and cleanliness, but that's probably just good practice anyway. Some of the music festivals you go to, you run out of toilet paper in the first 20 minutes. If that becomes stricter rules on that, then that's probably a good thing. But I think like most music promoters are, at the moment, seeing how they can diversify their product to put a stopgap until they can get back to what it is they do, and they won't be able to do that until it's all kind of broken down, really.
And have you got any kind of other plans for ways that you're going to make, apart from doing the training, to make things safer, Alex? You talked about your hybrid away day with the stuff.
We are starting to think in terms of, because sponsors for our events value the face-to-face networking, and like I said, we've tried to do a lot with and you can do one-to-one meetings. We've tried everything. We've done bingo, we've done quizzes, we've done wine tasting, we've done, you name it, we've done it, kind of thing, virtually. And it gets numbers, but it doesn't replicate the same experience. So I think our first plan would be to do kind of activity days where we're confident we can deliver those in a safe way. So golf's been on the table for the last six or 7 weeks. So I think we'll try a hybrid event with some kind of online live element, and then maybe an activity day where we can do that socially distanced, and start to try and bring those things back. But I think Ed was right, there is fatigue as well. So I think in the first few weeks of doing virtual events, things like quizzes, everyone's like, yeah, totally. And now everyone is like, not another quiz.
I hadn't spoke to my family as much.
I think I've spoken to so many people I've not spoken to in years in those first 4 weeks. And then it does kind of trail off because it doesn't hold you in the same way, I think. So I think it's just a case of innovating as we go and seeing where those opportunities are to do things that could bring people together, again, in real life. And I'm sure as guidelines change, we'll be able to do more innovative stuff. I think picnics and things come back, and all the rest of it, and hope the weather cheers up again.
Yeah, no, totally. That's what I was thinking. Has there been, do you think, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, Ed, but in terms of the music industry, I know we've got quite a few people from festivals and stuff on here. Do you think this is going to change the face of festivals permanently, for good, or do you think they will come back because I think a lot about the mental impact on people as well, and having us literally life turned upside down and us all being inside for 3 months or whatever it is. It does get a bit it's the thought of then going out again is quite weird. You're always going to have your die-hard festival goers in that year, especially with the younger audiences. But do you think there will be an impact that it will change them, even when there's when they find a vaccine?
I mean, the short answer is yes. It's going to have a huge impact, but it's just going to be the same with every sector of the economy, because a lot of promoters aren't going to survive. So the interesting thing, and someone got pulled up for saying this is a leveler, but from an industry perspective, this could be a really interesting time, because historically in the music events industry, you've got the big guys, Live Nation probably being the biggest, and they to some extent have a monopoly on talent, venues, big spaces, money. So we have seen an emergence of independent promoters, and the customer base is completely different. And this situation, actually, normally there's a big disparity between, if you look at sort of Hyde Park, for instance, and BST, the level of acts and the consumers that go there, huge numbers, big ticket value, but big superstars. And then you go to the small boutique festival, 5,000 people, more underground. The interesting thing is that those big companies are also being massively hit, and in some ways being hit bigger. So there could be an opportunity that people can sneak in the space. What would be really sad is if we lose a lot of our independent culture and the smaller venues and the smaller promoters, because they're the ones who really breed through the new artists. But I just think, as an economy, I think what goes around these live music events is so massive that I think in the coming months we'll start to realize that. You're talking restaurants, hotels, transport, production, security, amenities, everything that goes around the music event industry or large scale event industry. Same with theaters and clubs. So we're going to start losing those, and once we start losing those, will smaller entities be able to exist in a space? So for sure we will see the landscape change. I think we have been saturated for a number of years now, so there will be a clear out. And actually, like we said earlier, the last recession, that's when a lot of people came into the market. And the other thing I think is the travel element to it. And it was probably 10 years ago, so a similar time to the last recession, where Croatia just emerged as the go-to festival destination. There was a lot of UK promoters. It was very cheap to get to. It was cheap for the UK customer. And this whole sort of holiday and festival idea was born. Previously it was Club 18 to 30, and that got a bit old, and we all did them back in the day. But I think what we'll see now is regions in Europe like Malta, Portugal, Albania, these smaller countries that are actually beautiful and not really known to the mainstream tourism. They'll probably stick their neck out a bit more and say, look, we need the tourism, we're up for it, we're a small country, our rules are a bit more relaxed. So yeah, come to us and put on an event. So I think we'll see a new wave of new destinations coming next summer. And the good news is, I just don't think the consumer thirst has died down. If anything, it's there. We did a survey probably a couple of weeks into lockdown, and 85% of people said they still go to an event. So I just think that market is core people. And then the other side of, you know, the nervous, maybe the more older customers, I think once they get told that they can go somewhere, then they will be, I think that's the element at the moment. It's like the confusion between what they can do and what they can't do. But as long as an authority says you can go to a concert of 50,000 people, I think people will then just start to engage. But I just think there'll be fewer of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this gets turned around quickly and people stick it out. But I think we're going to see a lot of people kind of disappearing. Hopefully, new people will, you know, fill the gap and spur it on again.
Yeah. Have you got anything to add to that, Alex?
Not really. I mean, I'm interested as well what we think, kind of what this is going to mean. You know, so sustainability in events has been a really big thing for the last quite a few years now, in terms of lots of event companies talking the talk around reducing carbon, whether that's travel, like people traveling, kind of dispose, like plastics, everything. And I don't know whether this is also a bit of one of those turning points. Is it kind of going to drive that agenda a little bit, because travel is going to not come back maybe as quickly as anything else anyway? Or is it a case of, because like restrictions around like, you know, you go into a coffee shop now and they can't serve you from your own cup anymore because you've got to go back to paper because that's safer and all the rest of it. I think it'd just be really interesting. I've not really got a thought on it, but just really interesting what COVID will do for the sustainability agenda within events as well. Like whether it's gonna have an impact at all.
I think if we get legislation around that, then yeah. But if not, probably have the diverse effect, to be honest, because you know, cost saving is going to be number one agenda going forward. And that, I think you can see that sometimes when you go to some festivals where production values have just dropped because profit margins are shrinking. The competition is so high that, you know, your festival is, you may be making sort of 10% of your margin on a festival. Are you going to spend that on paper cups and reusable, or are you going to get cheap plastic cups and throw that out the window? So maybe those luxury sort of green items or other elements to production that would have been there were you successful. Promoters generally just go back to the wall of cost save. So it's going to, I don't think the events industry is consumer agenda led as people might like to think. I think a lot of people will go to a festival, you know, we've seen it over the years where you might have a headline artist that is controversial in his views, people still buy a ticket and go to the event. There is a core of people that won't, core of people who like to go to an event are socially responsible, this and that, but on a mass, as with everything, you know, Primark's still biggest close, and there's no getting away from their policies and clothes. So it's just the same as everything, really. I would hope that it doesn't happen, but I can see a lot of cost-cutting exercises coming down the track.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think the pressures will be in, like, for now. There's been a lot of good work done over the past few years about, like, you know, educating businesses on why we should be more sustainable. But I think you're right. I think it will come down to costs again, like in a much bigger way. So I think it'd be quite interesting.
Yeah. Just got one quick question, Alex. I think this one would be best for you, but obviously Ed as well. But events as we know it take a long time to plan, and therefore the lead times are long and they're difficult to book. As you've said, you've said that. Do we think that pop-up or low plan events will be a way to be responsive?
I think yes, in a nutshell. I think we'll still plan for big stuff far away out, but I think we'll have to. So it's twofold. I think we're doing a bit of work around how we negotiate with those venues and looking at terms, and actually lots of venues have been really great over this period in terms of their flexibility of letting you move bookings and stuff like that. And I'm seeing a lot bring in new T's and C's, which are kind of like, if you can't go ahead, then we will move it free of charge. So on one hand, I think you still need to plan for the long term, but make sure the terms are favourable for you to be able to make a quick decision on the other way. But I also think there's definitely an opportunity to be, I think it's made us all more responsive anyway. I mean, I've been in pure like responsive reactive mode for the last 4 months now, and I think probably there's a bit of change in thinking about, as Ed said earlier, you have a new idea, you believe in the idea, just get it out there as quickly as possible, and everyone is moving really quickly. So I think, yeah, twofold. I still think get some big stuff planned in, but don't be afraid to be scrappy and quick. And yeah, as long as you understand your audience, I think that's always the most key thing. If you feel like it's going to resonate and it will work, just get on and do things.
Brilliant. You got anything to add, Ed?
Yeah, I think it's probably the opposite in the music. In festivals, I think if you're a venue owner, you're just waiting to open, and as soon as you open, you just, that's what you do. If you're a large event organizer, you just can't do it. I mean, like as soon as they say everyone can do an event, the scramble for artists, space, license, everything's going to kick in. And can you do that? I would say right now, the person who's willing to stick their neck out and pick that event to do first and get the artists, and obviously all the artists and agents and everyone are kind of scrambling to try and get bookings for their acts because no one's playing anything. But yeah, I think basically when the government or the authorities say we can start doing events, then everything starts, and you're probably looking at 4 to 6 months to be able to do that. And then you've got to take into account, well, then the weather won't be right. So you are looking at next summer really for big outdoor events. As with, I said before, the big guys though, the guys who own the arenas, who own rights to artists, they will be obviously, the O2 Arena will be able to say, right, well, we'll do a massive New Year's Eve party because now we can, and they can flip things around quicker. So yeah, I think in mass we're going to be looking at another 12 months before we see kind of the full array. The pop-up element of it, it's always been there, and I don't think it's enough to support the industry as a whole. But of course, people will plug the gaps where they can.
Well, that's the time gone. Thank you both so much. That went by so quick, didn't it?
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for tuning in. I think one of the team is just going to put a link. We've got another webinar series on a Friday afternoon where we're joined by different venues because the world's opening back up, so you can see different places that you can potentially hold events and what sort of procedures and everything they've got in place. So please join that if you'd like to. Thank you, Alex and Ed, so much. If anybody's got any more questions for these guys or me, if you email us at hello@thisisgoho.com, then we'll get back to you and help you as much as we can. Do collaborate. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.